when he decided to speak out publicly for the first time yesterday on the FBI's belief that COVID-19 most likely originated from a Chinese lab on, of all networks, Fox News, the one network that's almost perfectly set up for conspiracy theorizing. Not only has Fox News been pushing conspiracy theories about COVID this whole time, but as we learned from the Dominion voting systems lawsuit, they also knowingly pushed conspiracy theories about the 2020 election. Conspiracy theories that turned out to be dangerous for members of Congress, the vice president, and for our democracy, and literally deadly for members of law enforcement. Which brings me to another shocking national security story. Speaker Kevin McCarthy's decision to selectively provide access to more than 40,000 hours of January 6th security footage. I mean, it was bad enough when he announced that Tucker Carlson, the chief propagandist at Fox, would get it exclusively. I mean, we know what he'll do with it, cherry-pick video to lie to his viewers about January 6th, something he's been doing for 2 years. But now McCarthy has agreed to provide the highly sensitive videos to the actual people who attacked the Capitol in the first place. Some of the same people who were calling for the hanging of former Vice President Mike Pence.
So that was MSNBC host Joy Reid touching on a lot of subjects, actually, that we've touched on this week. I think drawing almost in every case the opposite conclusion from what we drew. Where to even start with it? So, and before that, she's talking about
Russiagate. She says there are unanswered questions about 2016.
Right. About the FBI was helping Trump and hurting Hillary Clinton. That's what she says.
But for the October surprise, she says Hillary Clinton would have won.
Right.
But
I think that's very much up for debate.
Very much.
And then she starts going after. Then she's saying Christopher Wray. There's some good things about him because he's condemned white nationalism. And then she goes, but why is he giving interviews to Fox News? He was interviewed by Bret Baier. Bret Baier is a straight news reporter.
Who, as we talked about in a different segment,
asked great
gave him
questions.
Great pushback. Now, look. Also, she basically says, why go on Fox News to talk about the revelations from these two departments that say that lab leak theory is a possibility? Well, the answer is, Fox News is one of the only places that will even entertain a conversation about lab leak theory. I'm sure that he would be happy to come on your show if you invited him.
Really hung up on. She seems very annoyed that the lab leak theory has gotten some increased credibility. I screenshotted an image of her show the other day where she was being forced to discuss it, and the Chiron, the headline at the bottom was, well, other agencies say COVID originated from an animal.
That's okay. That was protest too much. You know what I mean?
So there was that element of it, which is, not great.
And by the way, deflecting to how dare you talk about these new lab leak theory conclusions or possible conclusions on Fox News is, in fact, a way to avoid actually talking about the substance of what the Energy Department has said about lab leak theory.
Yes.
Okay, so then she goes on to say, to touch on something that I think that is a legitimate area of discourse, which is this Dominion lawsuit, which has revealed that there was a kind of an open acknowledgement within Fox News that some of their reporting about the election being stolen, internally they were discussing it as bunk. So the New York Times reported, I think, last week that Richard Murdoch was forced to acknowledge in a deposition, I believe, that Fox News hosts endorsed election fraud falsehoods. And so this has been a big story in liberal media, I think, for obvious reasons, because people like Tucker Carlson and other figureheads were kind of openly discussing behind closed doors that, one, they were kind of displeased with Trump in the election, stop the steal stuff, but that they very much needed to publicly present a united front. Tucker Carlson going so far as to calling for a firing of one of his colleagues who publicly disagreed with some of the election denialism that came out of one of the interviews, one of the guests on Fox News. So that's, I think, a safe space for her to stay, for her to discuss. But she moves right on to 1/6 and starts making the accusation that the disclosure of these tapes to Fox News again is tantamount to giving these tapes to Tucker Carlson is tantamount to handing them over to the actual rioters, insurrectionists.
Yeah, we're waiting for her, and she's just drawing a total equivalency between Tucker and the rioters themselves, which is a really brazen accusation. And then she goes into the security of the Capitol being threatened by this, the security routes, the safe rooms. Again, they had to change all those. The Capitol was breached. They can't have the same processes anymore. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Again, if he wait for him to release the footage. If he releases it selectively, you can complain about it. You're happy to complain now that you didn't get the footage and the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, when she was House Speaker, didn't give you any access to this. Be as mad about that as you want, but that's not what you're hearing.
Agreed.
You're hearing that there's going to be another riot if there's more reporting on this.
The common thread through all of this is that Fox News is obviously a triggering entity for Joy Reid here. What do you think is going on? I mean, this is a monologue in which it's very light on the substance. Mm-hmm. Even when I think this Dominion lawsuit allegations that go to the core of the bias that she's alleging about Fox, mm-hmm. right? But instead of staying there and saying, here is evidence that reporters believed one thing behind the scenes and said another thing publicly, here's evidence that they were actively kind of participating in a narrative that they knew wasn't true and that also could have resulted in the overturning of a Democratic election. There's this, well, how dare the FBI director talk on Fox News? How dare Fox News report on footage that they were given? How dare Fox News exist? I don't know.
It's the misinformation boogeyman again. The idea that what the press should do, what the media's role is not to provide you information and provide you the right context and then let you judge for yourself, but to actually shield you. The media will reach the conclusions, and then we'll tell you the conclusions, and we're going to stop you from contemplate. We can contemplate. We're holier than thou. We are pure.
Yeah,
so we can encounter sin and brush it off, but you are fallen, and
that's
you
exactly
might
right.
conclude things we don't like.
It's not that there's not bias on Fox News. Obviously, we're talking about this Dominion case for a reason, but the kind of lack of self-awareness that what she's doing on MSNBC is a different kind of propaganda. I mean, this whole clip is opened with her saying, well, we still need to talk about what happened in 2016 because the election was stolen and Hillary Clinton being brought down by Russian interference is still hot on everybody's minds. And she doesn't see that as a similar kind of political narrative, very skewed partisan political narrative that has very little to do with what's newsworthy or timely of the moment and everything to do with her trying to rehabilitate the Democratic Party and give her own version of election denialism, which is that Trump was an illegitimate president to begin with, which is something that got said a lot on the liberal channels.
Right, and the FBI's actions contributed to, I mean, that it's like the mirror image of the thing that you're saying conservatives are crazy when they're blaming I mean, conservatives are sometimes saying the FBI, stole the election by, which I think they did some improper things. But it's the same thing the Democrats that some, like Joy Reid, say about 2016. Again, it's all Facebook's fault all the way down.
Yeah, the projection, maybe that's what it is. The projection is really dissonant to watch.
Yeah. So that was an interesting segment. But she did the greatest hits of our week, really. Yeah,
my head's spinning. I mean, like, truly, look, I reflect on a time when I was like a regular MSNBC consumer, and the family would have Keith Olbermann or whatever as we were watching dinner some nights back in the halcyon days of the Obama era. And I know that people felt that way about him at the time. I know that Keith Olbermann was perceived to be a blowhard by some at the time, and obviously there was political division at the time. The Bush years felt very divisive at the time. But am I wrong to feel like this is even a departure from that era?
I frankly used to think, and maybe this is still true of other hosts, like I used to think, probably I still do, that Chris Hayes, for instance, makes very strong versions of arguments that I don't buy, but when I hear that, I say that's very well presented, and it makes me at least think hard about what would I do to justify my position in light of that very excellent skewering of it. You know what? I used to think that way about Chris Matthews to some degree as well. I know you don't like the things he said about Bernie at that time. He was
the beheading in the Central Park.
Sure. He was very perceptive on foreign policy. On I think he understood the lack of support for interventionism among like the common man before some of the elites got it. So I still want that dynamic taking place on MSNBC, but
Trump derangement.
Trump derangement, they're really stuck in the misinformation.
In literally
framing.
2016.
Yeah, and that's when everybody's brains got broken.
Yeah.
Oh. All right, we will have more Rising right after this. Please keep watching.